What happens when a man stands up to an HOA president who tries to hand out his cabin like it belongs to her? At Lake Brantley, one weekend turned into a showdown. Nobody saw coming. They say some weekends can change you forever. For Isaiah Dunmore, that weekend began with his hands on the steering wheel and a stretch of winding roads. Through the Blue Ridge Mountains of northern Georgia, the trees pressed in like green walls. The air sharp with pine and the lake that mirrored the sky felt like freedom itself. He had been waiting all month to get away from coding deadlines and endless client calls. Out here in the cabin his grandfather had built with his own two hands back in the 1960s. Isaiah could finally breathe. The place carried memory, a rocking chair that creaked the same way it did when he was a boy. The smell of old cedar lining the walls. His grandfather's fishing pole still leaning against the porch rail. It wasn't just a getaway. It was family history built into wood and stone. Every time Isaiah pulled into that gravel drive, he felt like he was keeping a promise to the man who taught him patience, hard work, and respect for the land. He parked his car, stepped out, and stretched his legs. The lake shimmered below, catching the last touches of afternoon light. He thought about grilling steaks later, maybe casting a line in the morning. The silence, broken only by the call of a hawk overhead, felt like it could carry away every bit of stress he had carried with him. Isaiah carried his bag inside, dropping it with a soft thud on the wooden floorboard. He ran his hand along the window frame, glanced out at the rippling water, and whispered to himself, "Inhale." He poured a glass of water, sat on the porch, and let the stillness sink into him. But peace has a way of slipping away when someone else decides it doesn't belong to you. The knock at the door wasn't gentle. It was sharp, rhythmic, impatient. Isaiah frowned, setting his glass aside. He wasn't expecting anyone. He rose slowly, walked to the door, and pulled it open. A woman stood there, mid-50s, neatly styled hair and a clipboard tucked under her arm like a badge of authority. She wore a confident smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mr. Dunmore?" she asked, as if she already knew the answer. "Yes," Isaiah said carefully. "I'm Constance Fairchild, president of the Homeowners Association here at Lake Brantley." She extended her hand as though it were a command, not an invitation. Isaiah shook it politely, though her grip was firm to the point of pressure. "Well," she continued briskly, "I see you made it up for the weekend. That's good. Saves me the trouble of arranging access." Isaiah tilted his head. "Access to what?" "To the cabin, of course." Her tone was casual, like she was reminding him of something obvious. "I have guests arriving shortly. They'll be staying here tonight. I just need you to unlock it for them." For a second Isaiah thought he had misheard. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "You mean my cabin?" "Yes, this one," she replied, tapping her clipboard. "It's part of the community, Mr. Dunmore. We try to make things welcoming here. Everyone contributes." Isaiah's brows pulled together. "This cabin isn't community property. My family owns it outright. It was never part of the HOA." Her smile thinned. "That's not how things work around here." Isaiah leaned on the door frame, keeping his voice steady. "With all due respect, Miss Fairchild, this is private property. No one else is staying here." The confident smile vanished. Constance's lips tightened as if the air had soured. For a moment she simply looked at him, her eyes narrowing with the kind of stare that warned this conversation wasn't over. "Well," she said finally, her voice cooler, "we'll talk about this again in a few minutes. I don't think you quite understand how we do things." She turned briskly on her heel, her shoes crunching the gravel as she walked back down the path. Isaiah closed the door, his heart beating faster than before. He hadn't expected confrontation. Not here, not now, but something told him this wasn't the last knock he'd hear tonight. He didn't yet know that the simple refusal he gave would spark a storm that the whole neighborhood would soon be watching. Isaiah didn't have long to wonder if Constance Fairchild meant what she said. Within half an hour the crunch of shoes on gravel came again. This time there was no knock, just the sound of someone clearing their throat loudly outside his porch. Isaiah stepped out, trying to keep his posture relaxed, though the tension in the air was heavier than before. Constance stood at the foot of the steps, clipboard clutched against her chest, posture stiff. She looked less like a neighbor and more like someone ready to preside over a hearing. Two men he didn't recognize lingered a few feet behind her, pretending to admire the lake, but clearly standing as backup. "Mr. Dunmore," she began, her tone sharper than before, "I think we need to clear up a few things before this becomes unnecessarily complicated." Isaiah crossed his arm. Go ahead. This property, she said, tapping the corner of her clipboard as if it were law itself, falls within the boundary lines of the Lake Brantley Homeowners Association. That means all residences, whether occupied full-time or not, are part of our community agreements. Isaiah kept his voice level. My grandfather built this cabin long before the HOA ever existed. I've reviewed the deed. It's separate. Always has been. Her eyebrows arched as though his words amused her. That may be how you see it, but here we respect community standards. We share amenities. We work together. That's how we keep this place beautiful, safe and welcoming. You don't want to be the one standing apart, do you? Isaiah didn't flinch. I came here for peace and quiet, not to hand over the keys to strangers. The two men behind her shifted slightly, glancing at each other. They hadn't spoken yet, but their presence made it clear she hadn't come alone to talk. Constance's smile returned, this time sharper, tinged with something performative. I understand you're new to spending more time here. Perhaps you don't realize how much we rely on cooperation. This weekend is special. Friends of mine, longtime supporters of our community, made the trip from Florida. They're expecting accommodations. Isaiah's voice carried a note of finality. Then perhaps you should have booked them a room at the inn in Dunmore, because they're not staying here. A flicker of irritation crossed her face, quick but obvious. She took a step closer to the porch, lowering her voice as if trying to press authority through volume control. You really want to start your time here by refusing a simple request? She asked. Everyone talks. Word spreads fast. You don't want people to think you're difficult. Isaiah leaned forward slightly, his words deliberate. Respect goes both ways, and right now you're standing on my porch asking me to give away my home for the weekend. That isn't a request. That's entitlement. For a moment silence stretched between them, only broken by the soft slap of water against the shore. Constance's jaw tightened. The two men shifted again, this time a little closer, as though waiting for her signal. Isaiah held her gaze, refusing to let his voice rise. He remembered his grandfather telling him years ago, never let someone mistake calm for weakness. Calm is control. He wasn't about to lose that now. Constance finally turned slightly, gesturing to the men behind her. You see what I mean? He doesn't understand how we work here. We'll need to make sure the board is informed of this resistance. One of the men muttered. Board will hear about it by Monday. Isaiah exhaled slowly, forcing himself to keep his composure. Then let them hear. I'll gladly show them the deed. Constance's lips pressed tight as if she wanted to say more, but instead she tapped her clipboard against her palm, then turned as briskly as before. We'll see how long you feel that way once the community weighs in, she called over her shoulder. Isaiah stayed on the porch until the trio disappeared back down the gravel road. His stomach churned not from fear but from the heavy weight of confrontation.